Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 282.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're heading out to Pennsylvania, and we're going to connect with John Shofestall. John's a DIY hunter, and he took a magnificent buck this year, and he's going to tell us the story. He took it over a water hole in a transition area in the hills of Pennsylvania. And so anybody out in Pennsylvania knows it's hard to put down a quality buck, and John did exactly that. So stay tuned, listen to his secrets, and take some notes, and you might learn something.
Hey, folks, we got a special for you. The 2016 Rut Forecast by AJ Gall and Audrey Faffey. Yes, it's available right now by texting 33444 Rut Report. That's 33444 Rut Report.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're heading to Western Pennsylvania. We're going to connect with John Shofestall. John is a traditional archer, and he loves to pass the hunting tradition on to his son. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bruce. It's my pleasure to talk to you today, and I appreciate that.
Well, I just appreciate having everybody, across North America. And as you might know, the hunting season's not the best time to get guests on the show.
Yeah, it's a tough time of year.
Well, yeah, and I had one guy said, I'll do it from a tree stand. I said, yeah, and if Mr. Wonderful walked by, what's going to happen? You're going to drop the cell phone and go to work. He just chuckled. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't think I'd go that far for you.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't expect you to do that. So let's start the show off. Let's kick it off with that wonderful buck that you shot this year. Let's hear about the story, where he was, if he was on your hit list or not, and we'll just pick that story apart because I know a lot of people are haven't put down a buck, and if we can come up with one little secret, one little nugget, then it might help them put a deer on the ground.
Sure. Yeah, this particular buck, he showed up about midsummer. I was starting to hear about him from neighbors and family. He was around the area, and I actually seen him a couple times, and I started getting pictures of him. And he was a mature deer, definitely one I would take and be happy with if I got the opportunity, as with many others around the area. But we set the stands, and I'd never hunt a stand unless the wind's right, but we set all the stands up, and I was getting pictures of him during daylight on a regular basis, which is kind of surprising for an older deer like that. But it was like he was still in his summer pattern, and he just wasn't feeling any pressure yet. And he was coming to a water hole in the middle of the woods on a regular basis. So we set the stands and waited till the wind was right, and I went in there that night, and lo and behold, about 6 o'clock, I heard him coming, and I seen him, and he was just looked gigantic. I knew he was him, and I knew I was going to try to get a shot at him if possible. And he came up, and he didn't win me, but it's like he sensed something wasn't right, and just like them big bucks do, a lot of times they get away, but he stopped. I bleated at him. He went to leave, and I bleated at him. At 12 yards, he stopped broadside, and he let me draw on him, and I shot and double lunged him, and, he went, I don't know, probably 40 yards and just piled up just as quick as he ran that distance. And that's how I got him.
Now, let's do the backfill. So you had a water hole. Now, is this a natural spring, or did you have to build this water hole?
This is Well, it's man-made. Its particular spot was in the middle of an old abandoned strip mine, which I don't know how old it'd be. Older than I am, probably 70 years old, I'm guessing. And it was just a low spot in these rolling hills, and there's trees all over. It's completely wooded, and it just, year after year, it holds water right there. And everything goes to it, all the animals, because it's right in the middle of the woods. It's secure, and for the deer, it's on the way to the food source. In this case, it was corn, probably a half mile down through the woods.
So you're up on a ridge then. I understand you're up on a ridge. It's a natural, water source. And how far away is the bedding area?
For this deer, it would have been within 150 yards, is what I figured. I wasn't exactly sure which spot he was staying. I just knew which direction he was coming from. But from just knowing the thick spots in that part of the woods, I had a pretty good idea where he was like to stay anyhow and not be messed with.
Now, 150 yards, how do you get into your stand quietly? Because that's nothing in the woods, especially for the deer's, radar ears.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I just, I come in from the opposite direction of where I thought he was going to be, and I used the terrain to my advantage and the wind the best I could, and I just quiet going up in the tree the best I can. That's all you can do, but you know how it is when you're trying to get close to them big bucks. Sometimes you got to take chances and get close to them to where you can get a shot at them at daylight.
Now, what time of day was this again?
This was at 6 o'clock, and this was before the time change, so it was fairly early. In fact, I wasn't expecting to see him or any mature buck till, closer to dark, but he was the first deer I seen, and at that time it was probably getting dark at 7:30, 8 probably at that point in the season.
And this is way pre-rut, right? This was in September you took him?
No, this is October, early October, still pre-rut. And I considered him on his summer feeding pattern. They were making scrapes and rubs, just starting to, but they were still primarily eating, no doe chasing or too much rut activity at that point.
Now, was he the only deer that you saw that evening?
Yeah, that was it. That was the first one. And well, after I shot, I left, went out the back door and gave him some time. So I didn't sit there to see any more deer, but that was the first and only deer I did see that day.
Now, how long have you had this buck on your hit list?
Really, it's been 2 years. I didn't realize it till I thought about him, but I'd seen this deer last year on a regular basis. He was very active during a rut, and during daytime too. I would see him just coming in and out of my lane, or we'd go on a ranger ride, and we were seeing him on his feet, and he was just a nice 8-point, big 8-point last year with his one side is slightly bigger than the other, so he's easy to tell apart. And then this year, we seen him, and I hunted him and killed him, and then I put 2 and 2 together. It was the same deer as last year.
Now, you hunt with a recurve or a longbow?
I hunt with a Black Widow recurve bow I had made for me. It's a custom bow. They're out of Missouri. It's made out Osage. I shoot carbon arrows with that. The Easton Epic arrows and a Magnus. I guess you call it a traditional 2-blade broadhead, and I use them for penetration more than anything.
And did you recover the arrow after you double lunged them?
Yeah, well, it didn't go the whole way through. It hit the opposite shoulder and lodged in that shoulder, and it fell out about 5 feet from where his final resting spot was.
Now, as far as scent, how do you make sure that you're as scent free as you can be? Because we're not 100% free, because as soon as you breathe, your scent's out there. So let's talk about how you minimize scent.
Well, I take a shower before each hunt, whether it be morning or evening or both. And all my clothes are washed in the scent-free soap, and bagged in giant Ziploc bags. And then I actually collect leaves and twigs and stuff like that from the forest and put in there too for that cover scent. And I'd tell you, I've been using that Evercalm deer scent too, and I seem to think that works really well.
Tell me about that.
It's you open it up and then it smells like a barnyard. They call it a deer herd in a stick, and it does smell like a deer, and it just seems like, you rub some of that on a tree and it just makes for a good cover scent, and it relaxes them. And I can't say I've had any spook from that smell at all. I have deer, coming downwind, and I rarely get busted anymore. Whether it be the scent control, or, the Evercalm, or a combination.
Now, how about your clothing, your boots?
Oh yeah, I wear rubber boots. Like I said, all my clothes are stored in the bags. And I spray down with scent killer before each hunt and all my equipment, and just try to minimize it the best you can. Like you said, or you can't. I don't believe you can eliminate 100%, but you can reduce it to the point where you can get in bow range, and maybe it'll give you an extra second if something does get wrong, the wind shifts or something like that. You can actually get the shot off at the deer.
Now, how old was the buck that you took?
Well, we figured he was 4.5-year-old deer. That's what we think.
Now, is he one of the largest in your hunting area, or are the bigger ones you just can't close the deal on?
He's a realistic representation of a mature buck in Western PA right now. And we are getting, there's 170-inch and some bigger ones around. Not in every wood lot, but they seem to be getting bigger and bigger every year. PA went with a point restriction. I don't know how many years it's been now, but 5 to 7 years probably. And ever since they did that, and with reducing the doe herd, it's just made incredible deer hunting, at least in Western PA where we hunt at, compared to what we used to have. I mean, when I started out, everybody shot every deer that came along basically, and the ratio was out of whack, and there was no big bucks. They just weren't here. They didn't grow old enough to be hunted.
And so the Department of Natural Resources, they figured out what kind of program so you could have mature deer. Purely the antler restriction?
Yes, through the antler restriction. And Pennsylvania has a lot of hunters. So that was a major obstacle, too, for them. There was just so many hunters for the deer, for the buck. They were getting shot off. 80% of the bucks were being shot every year, and they were yearlings. So they were just nothing going up into the upper age class.
Let's switch it up and tell me why you like to hunt with the traditional bow.
Okay, yeah. I love the traditional bow. It's simple. I shoot instinctive, no sights. It's lightweight. There's nothing to go wrong on it. I could literally drop it out of a tree stand. Probably I'd never do it, but you could drop them out of a tree stand over and over again, and nothing's just going to happen to them. They're basically a bomb-proof bow. And for me, in my range, I don't shoot over 18 yards. That's my comfortable range. And for me, I don't need sights. I don't need release. to put that arrow in the vital of a deer when it's that close. And it's just, in that moment of truth, for me, it's just pull up and put an arrow into the vitals. I've really grown to like it. It's taken me years to get extremely good with it. And like a lot of people nowadays, I started out with a compound, and some friends showed me, their bows, their stick bows, and I shot them and liked them, and just slowly evolved. And eventually I sold my compound and went to traditional only about 15 years ago, and haven't looked back since.
Well, 18 yards is really close. I mean, let's face it.
Yes.
64 feet, if my math is right.
Yeah.
That isn't a whole heck of a lot of wiggle room for you. Like you said, the buck was coming in. He let you draw. Did he not see the movement? Or help me understand, he sort of kind of knew something wasn't right. You still had the opportunity to draw. You hit your release point and the arrow went and did its job. But walk us through that, how you're able to draw down on a buck that close.
Well, this particular deer, he like I said, he sensed something wasn't right, and he spooked that he wasn't going to the next county. He stopped at 12 yards, and I just, I was in the ready at that point because I was waiting for the shot right before he spooked. I was just about ready to draw on him and shoot him, but he let me draw on him, and this happened to me before, where deer just, for whatever reason, they're not sure what you are, or they're second guessing it, and they just let you draw back. And for me, it don't take real long to get settled in, and it just felt right. And I just released and watched the arrow go right there.
You got to be excited though. I mean, your heart rate's going to be going kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's half the fun with for me with a traditional bow, because every one I shoot is ultra close usually. 18 yards, I usually don't shoot that far. It's usually 10 to 12 yards, I'm sure, is my average of shooting a deer.
Wow. I mean, I've been close to deer. I've been close to elk, elk 15 yards and have them screaming at me. But in a tree stand, anytime a buck or even a doe seems to get within 10 yards of my tree stand, they sense I'm there, and I hunt with a crossbow. So it's a lot of movement. I mean, it's kind of like a rifle hunting, but you have to move it up and get your sight picture, and you got to shoot. So, I think that's really interesting how you're able to get so close. Now you must move really slow when you're going for your move.
Oh yeah. Most of the deer, just if I see them coming, or if I hear them, I get in position. Stand up or swivel around if I need to, and I'll stop them for the shot like a lot of guys do. So most of the time, I'd rather they just stopped, because what I've found. Now, I bleeded this deer. I had to get them to stop. But if they're on a natural movement, they're going to stop eventually, usually. And sometimes when you try to stop them, it puts them on high alert. Not all the time. But there's been a few times where being that close to a buck and trying to stop them with a doe bleed or a buck run, it scares them. It'll send them into the next county, which definitely don't want that to happen. But
no, we don't.
Yeah, it's a close range game.
Yeah, I've got a good friend, a DIY hunter, and if it's not running, if it's moving, as sometimes whitetails do, they're not meandering, they're actually moving. He'll just really yell at him, and it's because it just stops them, because all of a sudden they hear this loud noise.
Yeah, that works.
And he just
especially. Well, yeah, during the rut, sometimes, you might not have a choice other than try to get his attention, because he's so focused, and he might even be running or moving along, like you said, fast. And what else can you do other than try to get his attention, if he's going too fast for a shot?
And I agree. So, that's a conversation we could hold that would go on forever, because some people would say, yeah, I just go, or snort or anything.
Absolutely.
That's not natural.
Yeah. And it all works. It all works, and none of it works all the time.
That's a good point. I love that point. And I think, listeners, you got to have a lot of tricks in your bag, because every buck's going to be different, even though you're shooting from a similar stand. Every buck that comes in, it's going to be different, and you got to be ready. You got to be willing. And here's the other thing: you got to be willing to mess up. And I remember a guy that's helped me learn to rattle a long time ago, and I tickled the tines and stuff like that, and he just took them out of his hand, went bang. I mean, it was like, holy frick. I mean, he was just going off. He says, that's 2 bucks fighting. The tickling, yeah, that might be late September or early October, but when they're going for it, man, he says, you just want to crank it, because they can hear that sound from a long way away. You and I can.
Yeah, it gets their attention.
But it gets their attention. Yeah. And, I've had some great days. I never rattled in Mr. Wonderful, but, numbers of bucks in one morning. I'm thinking in Buffalo County. And I had the biggest buck was Pope and Young class, and nice mature deer, but I knew there were better deer there, so I didn't shoot them. But anyway, and my buddy was sitting about a half mile away, and he said it sounded like a fight between Foreman and Muhammad Ali. He said it was noisy. It was noisy. So I just throw that out for what it's worth. Hey, let's change gears and talk about it's not a matter of the bone on their head. It's not a matter of the score. In my position now, I'm looking for mature deer, and a mature deer, whether he's got 10 points or whether he's got all such junk on his head or character, but I'm looking for a mature deer, and the score is, what the score is. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I believe the same thing. I'm to the point in my life, my hunting career, I started out shooting small buck, enjoyed it. And then, as the years progressed, I started hunting mature buck, and that's what I hunt for now. But it's easy to lose perspective while we're out there. It's good quality meat. And my idea of a trophy and your idea of a trophy could be entirely different to a young kid. It shoots a spike, and that's just as big a trophy to me as that buck I killed this year I'm putting on a wall. And I never look down really at an adult either to what they choose to shoot, as long as it's legal. If they're happy, I'm happy for them. And I think it's easy to lose that perspective sometime, and especially in today's hunting culture where you see it everywhere, magazines, online, TV, the big bucks, and the raising them, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. But it just don't show the other side of it as much, and I hope we don't lose that perspective going down the road.
Yeah, one thing, and I monitor Facebook quite a bit because I get rut reports from people all over the Midwest. And, I'm so happy to see a lot of kids have taken their first deer this year, either with a crossbow or, a small compound, and even some traditional bows. And it just, I'm seeing more and more of that. And, guys will put up they'll put up their doe and say, hey, I got my first doe today. And I think there's been a change, because a lot of people would say, well, I got this doe. I know it's not the biggest doe or whatever, but hey, here's my deer, and I'm proud of it. And boy, is that going to be good eating. And I've seen a change. I've seen a change to that. And I like that, because as Brenda Valentine told me a long time ago when I started with my show, she said, Bruce, every single deer that you take is a trophy to you. It's a memory to you. It's not just the hunt. When you're sitting down having that venison roast, you're going to think about, hey, I shot this, and I was hunting with my good buddy John, and we had a great day. And that's all part of the hunting tradition that we have, and that's a good segue into the hunting tradition and what it means to you to be passing it on to your son.
Yeah, I really enjoy taking my son out. He's 9, and he's becoming quite the bow hunter himself. And it's just fun helping the next generation and showing him how to do it. And now that he's 9 years old, he's more involved than ever, putting up the blinds and scouting and looking at the trail cam pics, and you can just see him grow as a hunter. And he enjoys it, and it's something me and him can do together too. That's it gets us outside of the house and away from the TV and all the electronic stuff that all the kids are into nowadays. But he did pretty good this year. He got the first day of Pennsylvania season. He shot a doe in the morning, and then he got a buck in the afternoon, a nice little 6-point, which he's happy. He's still, he looks at them horns, and it's like if you picked up a 10-point rack, laying there, and it's fun to watch him grow and do it.
Now, did you use a compound, a crossbow, or a recurve?
No, he used a crossbow, and that's what he started out with 2 years ago. He started when he was 7. He's just too little to pull back a compound, which he says he wants to try that next, which I'm sure he will. But that is a nice thing about the crossbow. It gets them younger kids, and even women involved in the sport where they just wouldn't be able to do it any other way till they, at least till the kids got older.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And at my age at 70, I can't shoot a compound anymore. Ergo, I just had shoulder surgery, and the crossbow allows me to still get in the woods during archery season, and I have permits. And some states you don't even need a permit. Colorado, you have to have a permit from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife to hunt with a crossbow during archery season. But there's more and more of it, and it's widely accessed. Has been embraced by DNR groups, throughout the country, and I'm happy to see that for exactly the same reasons: kids, and then disabled people, and of course women. And some women don't have any problem with a compound, and others do. So let's everybody get out there, and I think that's the biggest thing we want to talk about. Hey, when you take a buck down, do you process it and bag it and your own recipes? Talk about from the field to the table.
Yeah, I process all my own deer. I haven't taken a deer to a processor for years. 2 reasons. First one, the quality. I know what I'm getting. And the second one, I save $100 on doing a deer, and then I can make my own jerky, sausage, but when I kill it, I of course I field dress it, and then I skin it, get it in the cooler, and I just, same as a butcher, I just debone it and made a pallet jerky this year. My son really loves that. And then hamburger, between 4 deer that we killed, I think I made like 70 pounds of hamburger, and we got enough red meat to last us, till next year easily.
Wow. Now, do you put some suet in the venison when you grind it, or tell us how you prep your hamburger?
Actually, the burger, I used to add suet. I used to do that, and I have experimented with mixing beef, like 50-50, which is good, and so does the suet. Both are good. It's just a matter of what you like taste-wise. But anymore, I've gotten away from that, and I just mix it. Just straight venison is all I use. Grind it. It's a little leaner. You can't overcook it, but to me, I love the taste of venison. I don't want any added beef or pork in it. For my palate, it's unneeded.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And as we look at wrap up the show now, are a few people that you'd like to give shout outs to that have helped you along the way, or your hunting buddies, or your son that's hunting with you? So take a couple minutes here and get some shout outs.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to shout out to my son Will and my daughter Whitney, and I'd like to thank my family for raising me a hunter. It's something that's definitely lasted a lifetime for me of enjoyment, and I'm very passionate about. And I'd like to thank you for having me on your show too. I enjoyed talking to you today.
Yeah, I love, this is the best part of putting the podcast together, because there's a lot of work that goes into getting guests on the show. The interview is the easiest part, because then I do all the production. So it's a lot of work, but it's a work of love. And plus I'm meeting people from all over the country. So, that's the exciting part. So John, on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous listeners all across North America, thank you for sharing your story about your personal Mr. Wonderful for this season's hunt.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Hey, folks, we're going to change it up a little bit on the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to head out west, and we're going to meet up with Henry Ferguson. Henry is an archer, and he hunts mule deer above 8,500 feet all throughout the West. I talked to Henry a couple of days ago, and he's heading to Utah, the Wasatch Range, to do some spot and stalk out there. The most important thing Henry shared with me is, hey, put your butt down, get your optics out, and find the buck and do a spot and stalk. Don't do anything else. Get in the right area and spend the time finding the buck, and then put him down. So listen up, folks. It's going to be a good one.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.